Okay, Adam, first off, just a film 101 question. You have about 25 jobs on this production.
Yeah.
How do you keep your sanity throughout the process? And for people who want to do exactly what you do, like sort of the Orson Wellesian of it all, who want to do that, what are the keys to your success as far as just integrating every single part of all your jobs in this production?
Well, thank you. It's a really interesting thing. I mean, the way that it's worked for me is I really try to do, when I'm doing one of the jobs, I try to specifically be doing that job. So, for example, every morning, rain or shine, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, I get up at 6 in the morning and I write from 6 to 9. I do that every single day. I'm doing it now. I do it every day. So I'm in writer mode during that time. I'm not on my phone. I'm not thinking about any movies that I'm working on. I'm just in that screenwriter world. And then, I try to do acting work, like because I'm directing and there's not going to be anybody directing me. I will work on a role, like for this role or this movie that I'm doing now. I'll work with a coach, once a week for 6 months, where I'll just be going through, talking about the scenes, talking about the beats, just as an actor, only thinking about it from that perspective. And then, during the day, the bulk of my work day, like from 10 to 5, I'm basically either in director or producer mode, depending on what meetings I have. Directing being like, I'll be meeting with the actors, I'll be shot listing with the director. I mean, with the director of photography. And then producer is, on some of these indie movies, that means we're out there raising money. I'm actually out there talking to investors and trying to raise money. But additionally, we're also putting together the project itself,
Adam, from your experience as an artist, is that probably how, I guess from your perspective, how a lot of people who may have the utmost talent just really maybe fail along the process because they don't have a concise workflow on a daily, you know what I'm saying? They don't have that workflow you have. And did you work really hard to get to that 6 to 9 give in the morning? You know what I'm saying? To where you are right now.
Yeah, I think it does matter, because I think the thing is, if you're not really thinking in the brain of the thing you're in, it's easy for them all to become muddled and it just starts to feel overwhelming. But if you break it down into really small tasks, I'm just writing right now, I'm just working as an actor right now, all of a sudden, yeah, I think that does help you become more efficient. And then to your point, I mean, I learned how to do the writing thing. First of all, I read somewhere that Prince, the musician, used to do that, would get up first thing in the morning and he would write his songs in the morning before anybody called him. And that stuck with me. And then there was a screenwriter that I really respected, who was also a really successful director. And if you ever tried to call him in the morning, he'd be like, oh, he's writing. He won't take your calls. He's writing. So I sort of internalized that and carved that out, that, hey, don't bother me in the morning. I'm writing. And now it's funny. It's like anything, people that work out or people that, you get into any habit. When I wake up in the morning, I want to be writing. It's almost like therapy for me or something. It's like I need that creative release when I wake up. It's just how my brain is operating,
One more thing before we get to Dotty Soul. When you hear people saying, I can't write because I'm all alone in the room, there's a blank page, I'm by myself, I'm not with people. Do you empathize with that? Or it's a part of you saying, well, not really. You just got to really do the work, because I think you're one of the more focused people I've ever talked to regarding the writing process.
Thank you. I think for me, I think that, look, there is something that if I was just a writer, if that was the only job I did in my life, I think I would empathize with that probably more, because I'm a people person. I crave being around people. But because it's only part of my day, and that's the other thing that I think is really relevant here, these things all feed each other. I think the fact that I get to write makes me a better director. The fact that I get to, direct makes me a better actor. It's like each of these things feeds the other. But wait, I had another. What was the question? There was another thought that I had about that.
I don't know, just being focused as far as the 6 to 9 period, and then being all alone by yourself in a room.
Yeah. So, oh God, my brain is like not operating.
No worries.
When it's going to come to me. It's going to come to me. Because that was the point that I wanted to make, which was something about, being, here's what it was. I got it. Thought of it. Yeah. There's a pressure that I think people put on themselves when they have to write, which is that, like, this thing needs to be important, or this thing, and Hemingway said is that the first draft of everything is shit. And I think for me, that is why it feels like almost like a therapeutic exercise in the morning. It's like, I know that this first draft or whatever I'm writing, I can just sort of explode whatever's in my mind, whatever's in my consciousness onto the page. And then the rewriting process is actually a lot easier because you're like, oh, that's crap. Oh, get rid of that. Oh, I hate that. Let me cut all those things. But just giving yourself permission that first draft of anything is allowed to be complete and utter garbage. And I think that is the permission that people that are writers or the people that talk about what you're talking about don't give themselves. And then it just feels like, it's so much stress. For me, it doesn't feel like stress because it's an opportunity for me to just express anything.
As a movie fan, I can enjoy Dotty Soul as an entertaining experience, but I wondered about the filmmaker. While you're creating this story for entertainment, there's a subtext to it, and I'm wondering if you led a parallel life. Meaning, did you grow as a person making this movie? And if so, in what ways, I guess?
Well, it's so funny because, this goes back to what we were just talking about a second ago, because the things that I'm trying to write about in that morning are therapeutic, because they are sort of the things that I'm struggling with, the things that are in my psychology. Like, it really is whatever I'm dealing with, whatever I'm being challenged by as a human being. And so then, playing those parts or, working on those specific issues is absolutely a mirror of what I'm doing. So like in Dotty and Soul, I was really feeling like I was living kind of an inauthentic life, which is to say that I felt like I was like, it was all about trying to put together a bigger deal as a producer and try together, raise this financing and blah, blah. And I just felt like, I'm an artist. I want to be expressing myself, my truth, as an artist. And I felt like I was so trapped by the sort of expectations of my investors and the expectations of like all the financial stuff was like, And so I felt like that's what Ethan was dealing with, so I created this CEO, who it was based loosely on some people that I'd met, some eccentric characters, but really was this idea of like, this guy feels he started this company because he wanted to create opportunities for people in transportation, right? That's why he started it. This idea of private car that people could get around and get, it was like I wanted to help people kind of thing. And then it got bastardized and it became this thing that was just for the wealthy. It was just for and he just kept leaning into his worst impulses, and ultimately he had to strip that away. I mean, Dottie really hands it to him and says, like, if this really is who you are, then you're not living a life that's reflective of that, life. That's not your backstory. So basically, he has to get back to who he is. And then ultimately things happen. And I think that was true for me. It was like really getting back to being an artist, being back to being a storyteller. And then I found, because right after I did this movie, I went on to produce another movie. And I felt that I was a much better producer having just gone through this process, because now I was more in touch with myself, just in the way that Ethan did. So if that makes sense.
Yeah, you're an experienced producer. That said, this is your feature directing debut. How cool is it to know that you can actually have actors like Leslie Uggams and M. Emmett Walsh in your film? You know how great they are, but you can actually shine the spotlight and tell people who watch your film, hey, you know what? This is, if you don't know their stuff, watch their great work and then just go back to all their great history. I mean, how much of a joy is that for you as an artist?
It's an incredible joy. And, Leslie Uggams, I mean, both Emmett Walsh and Leslie Uggams have had these extraordinary storied careers, as you're talking about. But obviously Leslie, because she's, the star of our movie, like, the idea that she is the leading role, that she is the center of the story, that people are talking about her in this way again, it is such a great, like you said, it's a great honor for me to be able to help facilitate that. And, and I think that's another parallel in terms of like what we're talking about in the movie, right? That she's helping me because she acted in my movie, which got my movie made, you know what I mean? So she really helped me. And then also I can provide this platform for her. And so it actually is in some ways similar to what happens in the movie, where these two people are basically helping each other,
Yeah, that's amazing. What's it like actually being her scene partner, and when she's telling your character off and she's trying to get through to you? It's such a very, very meta experience because you're actually acting opposite Leslie Uggams. What was like what was that like in the moment with her?
Well, it was great. I mean, the thing about Leslie is she's just so chill, man. She's so relaxed. She's so just like, she's confident and she's cool, and has this sort of like regal way about her, you know? And so, which I think is really perfect for Dottie, because I think Dottie has that too. And so, like, when I, Adam, am in Leslie's presence, I feel calm. I feel calmed because she's just so grounded and so centered. And I think that really is, again, these parallels of this story, right? Ethan is not centered. Ethan's all over the place. Ethan's like, and Dottie's just like, hey, man, just like, just, you can do it, you know? And I think that there was some of that dynamic in our movie.
What was the biggest lesson you learned as far as, you've been a producer, you're a writer, but what was the biggest lesson you learned on this first production that you're going to take on to your next directing project?
Well, I think, that it's possible. I think really that's the takeaway, because I felt more and more emboldened with every day. I felt like this is what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. It felt like, if I could work on this scale with this actress and do something that I'm really proud of, and I really am proud of Dotty and Soul as a movie and just as an experience, it really made me feel empowered that this is what I should be doing. And so, I think it's easy for all of us to pigeonhole ourselves, much less what the industry does to us, for us to say, oh, I'm only a producer, or I'm only an actor, or I'm only a writer, or I'm only a director. And anything outside of that is too scary, or people will judge me, or people won't take me seriously. And I think what this movie told me is that, no, you define yourself. And however you see yourself, or whatever you want to do, you can do that. And that's sort of my takeaway.
You have, needle drops can be really amazing, or they can be too much and inopportune at an inopportune time. Perfect needle drop. Can you talk about choosing that Toad the Wet Sprocket?
Oh,
Iconic song. Such a great use. And I don't want to say the scene, but it's a very important scene in your narrative.
It's funny. When I wrote this movie, I had that song in mind. I knew that song when I was in college, and that song really represented that sort of era, because it's a throwback, like 90s kind of movie, in that tone, and that song really spoke to me. And when we were hiring our music supervisors, I was interviewing people, and I literally would just ask them about that one song. I'd be like, I have to get this one song. Can you get it? And the guy that we got, Jonathan McHugh, is an incredible supervisor, but he was like, I can get you that song. And he did. And that's the reason why I hired him. And that's the song that he delivered. And I'm so glad you referenced that needle drop.
That's awesome. Just again, a couple final questions is, right off the top of your head, can you name one of your all-time favorite movies? And what is it about this film that speaks to you, not just as a filmmaker, but more importantly, as a cinephile?
Yeah, well, I have so many movies that I love, but I think if we're going to talk about movies that are parallel to this, and everybody wants to talk about Trading Places, and obviously I make such a reference to that. I have him, wearing the T-shirt, so like we really hang a lantern on the fact that it's Trading Places inspired. What I love about movies of that era, and what I love about, Dave is another movie that this was sort of tonally similar to. I don't know if you know that Kevin Kline movie.
Love it.
But like,
I'm so old, by the way. I did that junket. I'm so old. I did that junket.
You did?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Sigourney Weaver's really cool. So if you ever work with her, just FYI, you know that. Just know that.
Okay, yeah. We went to the same drama school. But those movies were about things. They had points. They were I don't want to say message films, but they had messages. And at the same time, they were light and fun and funny and commercial, and like, you could go there with your family, you could go there with friends from anywhere across the political aisle, and it wasn't like you were being hit over the head with the message. But then when it was done, you were like, oh, that's interesting. Like, let me think about that. Let me think about the history of Ethan's costume. Let me think about transportation. There's things that you can, that Dottie tries to do, which is really, this is a feel good movie for everybody. But when you watch it, maybe there's some things that you take away from it. And I think that's what those movies like Trading Places and Dave, and I had so many inspirations for this film, but those are sort of two primary ones that come to mind.
Adam, final couple questions. I'm looking at your IMDb as a producer, and over the, I'm part of a whole community, and we talked about movies that are underrated. I think one of the things that's underrated is a lot of people talk about, that fellow cinephiles, they say, oh, you got to see About Alex. That's a very underrated film back in the day. As a producer, does it matter? Does it mean something to you when people say, oh, I really appreciated the film, but then it's something that you produced 10 years ago? I'm just wondering, as a producer on the financing side, does that mean anything as far as like a movie that picks up like years later? Does it mean anything on a creative level for you when people compliment you on that kind of stuff?
It means everything to me. I mean, producing movies is such difficult work, and it's, you know, raising the money is one part of it, but really it is about being there with the team, with the director, with the crew, with the cast, and like you're birthing this project. And I feel that we're on a set right now, and I feel so supported by my producers, and it's like it is a personal thing. About Alex was a personal movie for me. And you know, I loved the experience of that movie. I loved all the cast, obviously working with Jesse. It was a really great experience. And I agree with you. I'm glad that people are finding the film now, because I really love that movie.
And lastly, what are you working on right now? Can you tell our listeners what to expect on the road?
Yeah, I'm doing a movie now called Re-Election, which I wrote and I'm directing and I'm acting in, opposite Tony Danza.
Never heard of him.
Yeah.
That's amazing, right?
Yeah.
Tony Danza?
Tony
Wow.
Danza. It's a fun, again, in this sort of throwback comedy way. This is about a guy who hates his life, blames it all on the fact that he lost his election for high school class president. So he goes back to high school as a 40-something and he runs for class president again. It's called Re-Election.
Okay, who else is in it? I mean, I grew up on Tony Danza. I think he's just one of the most underrated actors. I mean, of a generation. We know how powerful he is on no matter what kind of screen you put him on. What are you gaining from this kind of experience on this project?
Yeah, I mean, Tony, he's incredible. What Tony brings to this role, you know, this movie that I'm shooting now is about empathy, which again is a recurring theme. I mean, it's not that's also part of what Dottie's about, but it's about empathy. It's about seeing each other. Bex Taylor Klaus is the other lead in the movie. They are an incredible actor from, you know. Anyway, so my point is, it's about people starting to understand each other, and Tony brings this inherent, just when you talk to him, just this empathy. He's such an emotive, wonderful human being. You know, in the same way that Leslie was. I feel so blessed because I get to work with these incredible legends who are so kind. And that is, I mean, kindness is sort of something I value above all.
Are you ever going to take a break? Because I'm thinking there might be like several scripts inside your drawer. When can you be that guy? You know, the guy who actually has a nice mansion with a pool and just hanging out. Are you not that guy anymore? You can just. Is it every money that you make you're just putting back into your films? Is that what it is?
That's it. I mean, it's well, we raise the money from external investors, so it's not me putting the money in, but I have no interest. It's funny. My wife's always like, you know, she dreams of doing things like what you're talking about. I don't. For me, what is my joy is working. That's where I feel the most at peace. Like sitting on a beach, I guess, but that's not, maybe when I'm 100, but like until then, I got a lot of work to do.
Adam, thank you so much for your time. Really enjoyed Dotty and Soul, and thanks again for all your patience.
Thank you, Greg. I appreciate the interview.